Cabo Verde deliver one of the greatest World Cup upsets in a match day full of unexpected stalemates. Meanwhile, Tunisia sacked their manager after one game. Bayern signed 2 World Cup ballers, and Ruben Amorim is the next Milan manager. This is DMAC Daily. Today, I feel Cabo Verde. Who would have thought that this tournament's first 0-0 result would be perhaps the most stunning outcome in the tournament's recent history, as teeny tiny island nation Cabo Verde, in their first ever appearance at the World Cup, have held reigning European champions and tournament favourite Spain to a draw. A defensive masterclass for the ages from the Blue Sharks. I'm not sure I can fully convey just how special of a moment this actually is for the people of this country and the wider diaspora, but as a Socceroos fan who loves a World Cup Harambo clinic, that was next level. Like, Turkey is one thing, but Spain? I don't know what they're eating in Cabo Verde, but that's simply sensational stuff. And to those who say, well, DMAC, you slander Arsenal's Harambo, but you got nothing bad to say about it when these two nations do the same thing, and it's like, yeah, bro, there's a fundamental difference between a 1.25 billion euro squad doing it and these two. This is ethical Harambo, okay? Also, both these unfancy nations still managed to conjure up more possession than Arsenal did in a UCL final. Tony Kroos said it best, embarrassing. But enough about those losers. This is Cabo Verde's moment. Probably the craziest result in isolation I've seen in my lifetime watching the World Cup, because on paper, this was a statistical mismatch, right? The 64th ranked side, who had never experienced this kind of occasion, coming up against the world number 3, who come into this tournament with the favourites label. Spain's squad was also over 1.1 billion euros higher than their African counterparts too, but as we all know, games are not decided on paper. That being said, the world was anticipating a thrashing today. Off the back of Germany's 7-1 walloping of Curacao yesterday, Cabo Verde had been completely written off before a ball was kicked, but these guys weren't having it. They played like their entire lives depended on it today. What's even crazier is that their literal best player, Logan Costa from Villarreal, was on the bench still recovering from a long-term injury. Filling in his place was none other than Shamrock Rovers central defender Roberto Lopez, who got a random LinkedIn message from Cabo Verde's federation to first represent them. He was immense today, but his heroics were somehow outdone by none other than 40-year-old goalkeeper Vozinha, the UNC World Cup debutant who currently plies his trade for Portuguese second-tier side Chavez. He went on to deliver the goalkeeping performance of his career, making 8 saves to keep a clean sheet, securing the points and picking up the man of the match honors. His performance was so unbelievably good that he'd gained 2 million Instagram followers in the space of an hour after full time. As of recording this, we're at 4.2 mil, but by the time this is posted, it'll have no doubt risen further. Also worth mentioning, it could have been even more spectacular late on as Borges' header was saved by Simon. Imagine if they scored that, but in the end, that was all she wrote. Last thing on Cabo Verde, and we all know they're an underdog side, but we also got to respect their actual pedigree, because remember, this team automatically qualified in Africa, finishing above Cameroon. Like, they're not a beneficiary of an expanded World Cup. If it were a 32-team tournament, they'd have also still qualified. This lot also cooked at AFCON in 2023, making the quarters, and just a few weeks ago, they smashed Serbia 3-0. Long story short, do not sleep on these guys. I think they're going to qualify for the round of 32. Before we get back into today's World Cup news, a quick word from today's sponsor, Private Internet Access, or PIA for short. If you're watching the World Cup online or traveling abroad to watch the action live in the stadiums, having a VPN is one of the simplest ways to improve your online privacy and security. Think of a VPN like having an elite center back protecting your goal. You might not always notice them, but they're constantly stopping threats before they become a problem. That's essentially what a VPN does for your internet connection. PIA encrypts your internet traffic, hiding your IP address and helping keep your personal information private, whether you're at home, in a hotel, or connected to public Wi-Fi while traveling. It also gives you access to servers in dozens of countries from around the world with just a few clicks, so you can easily connect back home to securely access your favorite streaming services, news, sports events, and personal accounts without regional blocks getting in the way. One thing I've really liked is how easy it is to use. You simply open the app, select a server, hit connect, and you're protected in seconds. So whether you're watching the World Cup from the stands themselves or from the comfort of your own home, PIA makes staying secure online simple. To get a special discount, 83% off plus 4 extra months for free, head to piavpn.com/dmac, use the link in the description and pinned comment below, or scan the QR code on screen now. A huge thank you to PIA for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to the football. Now we turn our attention to Spain, because this was obviously a very disappointing start to the tournament from their perspective. Luis de la Fuente's side were, for many, including myself, the team to beat heading into 2026, a flawless qualifying campaign off the back of winning the Euros. Sure, there were a few injury issues heading into the opener, with star players Yamal and Williams not fully fit just yet, but the general consensus was that Spain would still comfortably prevail no matter who started. Outside of their star attackers, it was an otherwise full-strength team. As expected, Unai Simon benched Garcia and Raya in goal, but I was admittedly stunned at some of the selection decisions from De La Fuente, opting for Gavi as a left-sided inverted winger. Like, sure, Williams wasn't fully fit, but you still had the likes of Baena, Munoz, Pino, Olmo, even Ferran on the left to cut in, but he backed Gavi, a central midfielder, and it just didn't work. Gavi was entirely ineffectual in that role. Similarly, Ferran offered very little on the opposite flank. That being said though, he should have scored from close range. Peak moment from Ferran right there. He always seems to spurn the easier chances, doesn't he? Yamal did eventually come into the fold in the second half, but he was unable to break through the impenetrable wall that was Cabo Verde's backline as they settled for a point. Very underwhelming performance for La Roja, far too lackadaisical in my eyes. It seemed as if they weren't bothered about dropping points, with the lack of urgency throughout. Like, at halftime, substitutions should have been made. Even if you want to rest Yamal and Williams, they had so much additional quality on the bench that could have impacted this game. Granted, it's not the end of the world for Spain. Remember, they famously won the 2010 World Cup, having lost the tournament opener, and off the basis of their other Group H opponents' displays, I still see them comfortably topping this group, and I don't think we should rule them off after one game. But that was an uninspiring performance if I've ever seen one. There's big pressure on Yamal now moving forward. Meanwhile, in the other Group H match, another stalemate was in store as two-time tournament winners Uruguay were unable to get the better of a determined Saudi Arabia side. Now, going into this fixture, Uruguay were the clear favorites to win. They have long been one of international football's great overachievers, consistently competing with nations far larger than themselves and boasting a proud World Cup pedigree. However, it must be said that this current generation appears to be a step below some of the great Uruguayan sides we've seen over the past 2 decades. While players like Federico Valverde remain world-class, injuries to key figures and a lack of elite-level depth in certain areas have left Marcelo Bielsa's squad looking more vulnerable than in previous tournaments. Even Darwin Núñez, expected to be the focal point of their attack, arrived at the World Cup short of rhythm after a difficult period at club level and has struggled to consistently replicate his best form for the national team lately. And those concerns were evident throughout much of this match. Saudi Arabia were exceptionally disciplined, organized, and just difficult to break down, frustrating Uruguay for long periods despite conceding the majority of possession. The Saudis then capitalized on a rare error from veteran goalkeeper Fernando Muslera, with Abdallah Al-Amri reacting quickest after a spilled catch to give his side a shock lead before halftime. Bielsa then made a big call, hooking off Núñez at halftime for Canobio, and credit to the manager, Uruguay completely dominated the second half. Maxi Araujo managed to find the equalizer 80 minutes in, with Saudi Arabia clinging on for dear life at the end. Keeper Mohamed Al-Awas with an unbelievable 9 saves to his name. He'll be a bit disappointed with the actual goal he conceded, but it was an otherwise top goalkeeping display with the points shed. So it's anyone's guess who comes out on top in this group. My money's still on Spain and Uruguay, but it's all to play for at this stage. Moving to Group G, and Belgium were also forced to settle for a point, held to a 1-1 draw by Egypt in Seattle. Similar to the previous match in many ways, Egypt came into this contest as the underdog side. However, I was quietly impressed with their performance today. Outside of star players Salah and Mamouche, the other 9 starters were all domestic-based players, yet they matched Belgium all game and gave a great account of themselves, stunning their European opponents in the first half as Imam Ashur lasered one past Thibaut Courtois. What an absolute belter of a strike that was. That being said, Belgium did fight back, De Bruyne coming closest, hitting the post, but 1-0 down, chasing a goal, they brought on their all-time leading goal scorer Lukaku for inspiration, and the Belgian big man made a big difference. Just 23 seconds after coming onto the pitch, the veteran striker used his strength and movement to force Mohamed Hani into an own goal and level the scores. So full time, 1-1, probably the fair outcome on the balance of play. I've seen a lot of criticism for Belgium's old guard in the immediate aftermath of this game. Long gone are the golden generation days, but if any players are worthy of criticism today, I think it's the younger stars. Doku was woeful, the Catalare offered little up top, Onana struggled to assert himself in midfield. In the end, it was Unks, Meunier and Lukaku who came to the rescue. That being said though, I'm not convinced with this Belgium team. I thought they looked decent in recent friendlies, but today, different story entirely. They appear very beatable. And in the final World Cup outing of the day, we were treated to a bit of a spectacle as New Zealand and Iran played a 2-2 thriller. 31 attempts between the two sides. This was a proper game of football, basketball-like at times. Chris Wood, the veteran target man, feeding his winger Elijah Just, who took a touch and then smashed in a beauty of a volley. Iran hit back in the first half through Ramin Razaen, and it would be a carbon copy situation in the second. Some lovely free-flowing football by the Kiwis, Just linking up with Wood once again, and the Motherwell winger took his chance brilliantly, but Iran didn't back down. They found another equalizer, the goal scorer turning provider this time round as Rezayan whipped in a lovely ball to Mohebi, who made no mistake with the header. A great game by both teams. The Kiwis still unbeaten in their last two respective World Cups at this stage. Meanwhile, Iran's comeback ensured that no AFC nation has been beaten this tournament. 6 matches, 0 defeats. There's levels to this game, baby. Fair play to Iran as well. It's no secret they've had a less than ideal preparation for the World Cup. Their travel arrangements to each game is unprecedented too, so respect to those players who have given a great account of themselves. Meanwhile, the same can't be said about Tunisia, as they're set to sack manager Sabri Lamouchi following their crushing 5-1 defeat to Sweden in their opening group stage match. This decision comes just 5 months after Lamouchi was appointed. He'd only won once in his previous 4 attempts, but in his last competitive game, it was a disaster as Tunisia were comprehensively outplayed by a rampant Swedish side led by Alexander Isak and Viktor Gyökeres. Tunisia still have 2 group matches remaining against Japan and the Netherlands, yet Federation officials felt yesterday's performance was so atrocious, and the fact that they've copped 10 goals in the last 2 outings meant that he simply had to go. It just wasn't a good enough. Now, Lamouchi's dismissal means he is the first coach in World Cup history to be fired after just a single match at the tournament. No confirmation as of recording yet who will step in as his replacement. However, local media is reporting that Hervé Renard could step in straight away, which would be very interesting. Moving to transfer news, and fair play Bayern's recruitment staff, because they are destined to secure 2 of the breakout stars of the opening match day of the World Cup before their transfer fees have the chance to explode further. Nathaniel Brown and Ismail Saibari have both lit up North America for their respective clubs in match day 1, hence Bayern have pounced. According to both Fabrizio Romano and Florian Plettenberg, Nathaniel Brown is closing in on a €55 million transfer from Eintracht Frankfurt, while it's here we go for Saibari for that exact same figure, starting with the German Nathaniel Brown, and it was a dream World Cup debut for the 23-year-old left back, providing an assist and then getting on the score sheet. Outside of Germany, he may not be that well known, but in his own country, he's been a rising star for some time. One of the best attacking fullbacks in the Bundesliga. He's had back-to-back campaigns with 10 goal involvements for Eintracht Frankfurt, but he's not just an attacking-minded player. This is a very well-rounded individual who does the defensive duties and dirty work too. He's made for a club like Bayern, in my opinion. They desperately need more depth in that area of the pitch. Obviously, Alphonso Davies at full fitness is unreal, but there lies the problem. He's had a lot of injuries over the last few years. Brown's a great addition that could genuinely dethrone Davies as first choice left back. Saibari, on the other hand, is a similarly sensible addition. The Moroccan has been tearing up at PSV for some time now, primarily as an attacking midfielder or winger. However, the World Cup caught a glimpse of his versatility in full, giving Brazil all sorts of problems as a number 9 and scoring emphatically. Don't get me wrong, Bayern's front 4 at full fitness is elite. I don't see him walking into that starting 11, but the guy can play anywhere. He's the type of squad player that Bayern absolutely need across all competitions. Versatile and clearly a very talented individual. Elsewhere, and just 6 months after being sacked by Manchester United, Ruben Amorim is set to become AC Milan's new manager. The appointment comes amid a period of significant upheaval at the San Siro. Milan failed to qualify for the Champions League recently and responded by tearing up their entire sporting structure, parting ways with manager Massimiliano Allegri and several key executives in a wild reset. Now, the club is betting that Amorim can recreate the success he enjoyed at Sporting previously, where he transformed a sleeping giant into Portuguese champions twice in the space of 4 seasons. That's the positive angle. The negative, however, is that Amorim's most recent spell in Manchester was nothing short of disastrous, culminating in the club's worst Premier League finish and his dismissal after a little more than a year in charge. But Milan appear convinced that his struggles at Old Trafford were more reflective of United's dysfunction rather than his coaching ability. Now, as you know, I've been a vocal critic of Amorim in the past, but maybe his methods are more suited to Italian football. This league has an affinity towards his sort of tactical shape, but I think the biggest issue imminently is the fate of his fellow Portuguese star. Rafael Leao has publicly admitted he wants a new challenge, suggesting that both the Premier League or La Liga would be better suited to his style of play. Losing arguably Milan's most talented attacking player would significantly complicate Amorim's rebuild. It's a big challenge for the 41-year-old, but Milan are a huge club with some great players. That being said, this club doesn't tend to give their manager everything, and Amorim, well, he demands that the owners buy into his project. He's also a very stubborn manager and refuses to deviate from his ideas, even without the personnel to fully execute it. So we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. I'm not particularly convinced. Anyways, guys, that's a wrap for today's DMAC Daily. Don't forget to check out piavpn.com/DMAC to get 83% off from our sponsor, Private Internet Access, with 4 months free. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you tomorrow.